Hey, welcome back to my channel. What we have here is the Source 1 V3 frame. This is a 5-inch freestyle frame, and I ordered this from Get FPV. We're going to do an unbagging and kind of initial thoughts, get some weights, and kind of look it over. Now, I was told by a couple people online that it depended on where you would get the frame from, which sounded strange to me, but if you ordered this frame from one vendor versus another vendor, it would have either sharp edges or chamfered edges, or it would be more finished or less finished. So I got this from Get FPV. We're going to open it up and check it out. I am going to I would like to put it in the frame for you so you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like in the frame. So let's go ahead and get started and see what this thing looks like. Alright, so initially out of the bag here, so we have this wonderful print here that kind of shows you what it's supposed to look like finished. That's about it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get into that. Alright, so looks like everything's bagged up separately so it's not all scratched and beat to heck when you get it. We got 4 arms here. Looks like a pinch plate. Wow, that is a really thick pinch plate. FPV camera mounting plates, standoffs. Now they're smooth. I like them to be gnarled rather than smooth, but plenty of screw hardware. Looks like a battery pad. It's kind of slippery, not real sticky. Top plate, bottom plate. So I'll take the plastic off all this and then set it out here. Just going to jump in real quick here before I get done bagging everything else. This bottom plate is sharp as can be. These edges are not finished. I don't know if you can see my hand. The carbon is coming off. It's little shards of carbon. So I'm gonna have to chamfer this whole thing. Check out the arms real quick. Yeah, they're pretty sharp too, and definitely not clean. I don't know what to say about that. Stiff arm, but yeah, they're sharp. I was kind of wondering when I was reading all the reviews and things, depending on where you get it, is whether or not it's finished. This edge right here isn't even, there's no sanding or anything. That top layer of carbon is just sticking out. I don't know if you can see that or not. Just the edge of that is just as sharp as can be. Just use the frame to cut the plastic open. It's about as sharp as my old knife here. That's gonna take a long time to sand all that. So we got some standoffs here. They are aluminum, and they are 30 millimeters by 5 millimeters, and they're gonna take an M3 screw. They look pretty good. The threads are kind of nice. They're not. Sometimes you get them and they got all kinds of burrs sticking off the end. They look all right. They are steel. So it looks like you get all the hardware you need to put it together. It's a little bit of play in the thread. I don't know if you can hear that. Little bit of play in there. Well, I tell you what, I'd like to get to putting this together and everything. I'll go ahead and get some weight. So we're at 51.5 grams, a little over 51.5 grams just for the 4 arms. One arm is 12.83 grams. the bottom plate with the pressed nuts. So 30.96, so 31 grams. The pinch plate is 12.92. Top plate is 12.52. The FPV camera mounting plates are 4.83. And all the hardware is 25.69, 145.15. That's a pretty decent weight on a. That's pretty heavy. It's probably one of the heaviest 5-inchers that I got. So let's go ahead and get to sanding. So I'll be back here in a little while to finish filming this. So I'll go ahead and get this sanded and we'll put it together, see what it looks like with other components around it. Yep, this ain't no fun at all. If you get this TBS Source 1 frame from somewhere and then this is already done, let me know. I'd appreciate it. Alright, now that sanding is done, good grief. I went through and smoothed all the edges and then also made sure that inside here, where your battery straps are going to go, make sure that that is nice and smooth. Just took a diamond file and worked all the edges. So I got the frame put together. I've got all the standoffs in, and now I've added just a couple motors, just so we can kind of get a good idea of what kind of sizes we're dealing with. The 30 by 30 mounting stack for your ESC flight controller, or whatever you're going to put in here. You can kind of see the spacing. So it's quite a bit of space really to put everything in. And then the 20 by 20 on the back. Okay. So 20 by 20 fits in the back. And you can see the clearance here is not a lot. Personally don't like to have my power cables directly under my VTX. So I'm actually going to raise my VTX up just so I can have some space. But you can kind of get an idea. I was doing some testing with this. Let me take the antenna off. Try to give you an idea anyway. So you can kind of see the spacing between those stacks. Okay, and then they supply you with the screws to run your standoff out the top here. Okay, so that goes through that goes through the arm. Okay, so it'd be this screw here. That screw just sticks out long enough to put a standoff through it. Okay, so if you have like a regular standoff, you can screw that in there, and it works fine. It's just the right height. I personally don't much care for using individual nylon standoffs, just because I crash too hard and too much. So I've got some 35 millimeter M3 screws that I've purchased separately, and that's what you see here. So you can see that it sticks up. It's going to stop, at the top plate. So you have some room. So if you wanted to get a 35 millimeter standoff to put in there, and then you can get your stack separated, get plenty of air movement. The other thing is a lot of these flight controllers and even the ESCs have these anti-vibration grommets that go on, and a standard standoff that you buy won't fit through. Okay, you have no way to thread on the other end of that. The end of it's just not long enough. So that's something to think about. They do supply 4 screws that are longer that will stick up that you can put standoffs, but that height, when you start using a standard M3 standoff, they're just not long enough to go through the anti-vibration grommet. So that's one thing to think about. They do not supply any other screws for mounting your hardware. These standoffs I've purchased, and then of course this long one, they only supply these 4 arm screws that protrude. So this is your normal 30 by 30 pattern, and then your 20 by 20 pattern. They do have, it looks to me like you could put a battery strap through the bottom here, so you could have a single strap here, and then there's also some battery straps on the outside here, so if you want to strap something down inside there. So there's a couple options. These 2 slots here for the camera mount. The camera mount has one position right here. These 2 on the edge just flush set against the frame, and then as this is the same, this sets flush against the frame, and then this inserts into the top plate. So you have 2 connections to the top plate, 1 connection to the bottom plate. I'll zoom in on it here. All right, so we'll take a look at the camera cage here, and we can see several different mounting patterns. So you can run a 3-screw combination. So you have your center screw, and then these are notched. So if you loosen both of these screws on each side, when you change your camera position, it actually wants to notch between settings. I don't know if I'm a fan of that, just because I like to put it where I want it. I don't want it to have to notch. So you can kind of see, like, there's the notch, there's a notch. Okay? I don't know if you can hear that or not. I imagine after you do this enough times, it's just going to be as smooth as can be. So if you don't like the notches, just work it back and forth until they're gone. But there's also another center hole here. So if you wanted to protrude your lens past the frame, you could use that center notch with that lockdown slot. Okay? So at least you have some decent camera angle. So if you wanted to, you could shoot that angle up quite a bit, like 65 degrees. And then of course, just all the way down is level. So that's dead straight. And then that'll sit in here like so. And then your stack will go in here, your 20 by 20. None of this is set up the way I'm going to run it, but that gives you an idea of the spacing that you have between components. So your camera is 20 millimeters from the edge of the camera at a 30-degree tilt. Well, this might be 35 degrees. There's about 20 millimeters between there. And then the stack standoff height here is 15 millimeters. So from the edge, right here on the edge of the ESC to the 20 by 20 board is 15 millimeters of space. The one thing I did like about the frame is that sides of it protect the ESC. That was one thing I was looking for, because my race quad is narrow. The frame itself is narrow, and my ESC pads for the motor pads are sticking out past the frame. And when you hit something from the side, those pads can be broken pretty easy. This frame protects everything. And if I'm not going to secure everything down, but just to get an idea, that top plate, it does have quite a bit of protection on that camera. You can see that, that camera is going to be protected pretty well. I've seen a lot of questions. This does take a full-size camera, okay? So it is 28 millimeters. So from side to side in here, it's 28 millimeters. I'm using the Runcam Phoenix Micro, so I had to put the adapter plate on it. It did come with the adapter plate, but that gives you an idea how large the spacing is. I guess if you wanted to, you could run off these standoffs a TPU to go in, some kind of adapter, but this frame is made for a full-size camera, okay? I don't think you're going to get a nano or any of the micro stuff in there. Just the mini. I call it mini, which is the mini. I'm sorry, is a 19 by 19. So 19 by 19. And then with the adapter plate, it pushes it out to 28. So we got everything together. The frame, I had to do all that. And also, the other thing is, I have one frame that will not accept 51 props. So these are, and you can see here, the amount of space between the frame and the is about 8 millimeters. Okay, so you do have a fair amount of clearance between that standoff and the prop. So this one is a T-motor 5143S T-motor prop. So you can see there's plenty of clearance. Let me grab a standard 5-inch prop. So we have our 51. Okay. And then we have our standard 5-inch. Let's take a look at the bottom here. So we have access to do a 20 by 20 stack in the center. Okay. So you have your 20 by 20 M3 screws. So if you wanted to, you could do two 20 by 20. And then you have the ability to get, you know, the head won't fit through that hole, okay? But you're able to get your screw in there and to tighten it, you know, if it loosens up. But if you need to remove that 20 by 20 screw, you're going to have to take this pinch plate off, which of course means that you're going to have to take all 4 of your standoff screws out. So it doesn't seem like a very friendly setup when it comes to a 20 by 20 stack here in the center. And then everything else is pretty much normal. The hole here, if you're running let's say you're going to run a larger motor, that hole in the center there is 7 millimeters. So you have a 7 millimeter diameter hole, and then your motor post to motor post. So your farthest is 19, and then your closest is 16. So you could run a 16 or 19 motor mount pattern. These motors that I'm running are the 2306 2500 kV Strix motors, and they have a motor pattern of 16. Okay, so we'll just put the top plate on real quick and I'll give you a couple measurements in between. I just got these small little screws here just for testing and measuring purposes. By no means am I going to use this to secure the top plate, because they actually give you plenty of hardware. These are the screws here that they use to secure the top plate. The measurement inside is 30 millimeters. Okay, so you're going to have quite a bit of space in between. The overall length of the whole entire quad is 150. Okay, and then from motor post to motor post, 126 millimeters. And then from this motor post to this motor post is 137. So yeah, overall design of it seems pretty good. Seems like she's gonna be a fun ripper, and I'm gonna go ahead and get this built. I was kind of debating if I was gonna do a full build video on the channel or not, but that's the frame. If you have any questions about this frame, let me know. I tried to kind of cover what I could and where I purchased it from, Get FPV, and no, it did not come finished. I had to do that. Had to do it. There was no, you couldn't just buy this frame and put it together without doing something to the edges, because they were sharp, and some of the top layer overshot the other layers. So we had like a little bit of, here's the arm, and then the top layer went over, so it was really sharp. So that's the frame. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I hope this helps you in some way, and if it did, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. If you hated it, give me a thumbs down. It all works. Enjoy the breeze.